Hey, it's Ben Wise from ZOAR Fitness, and today I want to talk about how we can get you to stop being out of breath on the rower. So first thing here, there's a difference between breathing hard and being out of breath. Like you're working out, and if you're going up against your capacity, you're going to be breathing hard. Like that's not a question, that's going to happen. The question is, are you getting out of breath where your breathing is a thing that's actually slowing you down, so you're having a respiratory limitation? So the real question is this actually a respiratory limiter? So is it something that's slowing you down, or are you just getting out of breath because you're doing something incorrectly? So there's four potential things. If you answer yes to any of these, then you don't have a respiratory limiter and you just need to do something differently while you're actually working out. First one is if your pacing strategy is poor. So if you just pace your workouts wrong, you come out way too hot, that's gonna cause you to be hyperventilating because you just have to blow off all that CO2, and that might cause you to even have a respiratory limitation. However, that's really not what's slowing you down. What's slowing you down is the fact that you are pacing your workouts wrong. You're just coming out way too hot. Same thing if you were way too sympathetic. So your autonomic system is not actually set correctly to your task for the ideal state of arousal that you need to be in. That's gonna cause you once again to start to breathe up in your chest and really rapidly, and it's going to feel like you're out of breath right away, but that's not an issue with your actual breathing musculature. So what you need to do is stop maybe blaring the music so loud, stop taking so much pre-workout, or for example, at like a competition that you might still be way too aroused, but that's the issue, is that it's an autonomic system problem, not necessarily a respiratory problem. The third one is if you have poor cardiac development. So in other words, your stroke volume mainly is the thing that's slowing you down and not allowing for you to express your capacity. So if you are occluding, you're not actually able to deliver blood to your tissues and be able to clear fatigue because your heart isn't strong enough to punch through those blockages, then that's going to make you start to hyperventilate because you're gonna have all these metabolites built up. However, again, that's not the thing that's actually slowing you down. And then lastly, is that you're in a Metcon or mixed work where you might actually have a respiratory limitation in a different element or movement in that workout, but it's not the rowing itself. So for example, you might be doing wall balls or thrusters and you can't breathe effectively in those positions. So you're posing as a respiratory limitation there. However, when you get on the rower, then you're trying to catch yourself up. So you might actually just need to do more homework on the other movements that you're pairing it with in rowing. And that's really the issue. But if that isn't the case and you believe that you are answering like you're not actually saying yes to any of those questions, then it might be a respiratory limitation. And if that's the case, let's go through each one of these. So if you believe that none of those previous scenarios relate to you and that you truly have a breathing limitation, then there's really four different things that could potentially be causing that. So let's go through those one by one and then provide some interventions for training that you could actually do to help improve those scenarios. So the first one is just that your mobility isn't actually allowing for you to get full breaths in the position. So for example, when you're actually on the rower, if you're not able to get a full inhale in the compression of that catch, then you're not going to be able to express nearly as much of your potential vital capacity, so like your lung volume. So in other words, we need to make sure that we can expand your ribcage fully while you're actually in that position. So intervention here is pretty simple. You do mobility work and you do some positional breathing work. So we can do things like good mornings. We could do things like forward folds with making sure that you maintain a flat back. And then we can do things like positional breathing on the rower. And I'm just gonna give a quick example of that. So you're going to compress in the catch. You'll maybe take 3 full breaths in the catch. So like, and then you'll do 3 normal strokes. And then you'll take 3 full breaths at the back of the stroke. And then you'll take 3 more strokes. And then once again, you're gonna take those 3 breaths in the front of the stroke. And then you'll just repeat that process. And that's just teaching you to be able to get a full inhale and exhale in the positions that you need for rowing. So then the second thing that could be causing you to have a respiratory limitation on the rower is the fact that maybe your fluidity of motion and your mechanics of your actual row stroke are not what they could be or should be. So typically this is resulting in just people carrying too much tension through the various parts of the stroke where they shouldn't be having that much tension, or they don't need that much tension. So you want the minimal amount of tension that you actually need to be able to complete the stroke and have a powerful full stroke. So really the intervention here is pretty simple. Like, go back, relearn the basics, the mechanics, the sequencing of the pull and recovery. We covered this in video 1 of this series, so I'll link to that. But that is what you need to go back, relearn the basics, and once you hammer those, that respiratory limiter won't actually show itself that way. And this is the case with like all of these examples, or what could be for all these examples, where the root cause of this thing isn't necessarily breathing itself, or like that's the thing that's slowing you down. It's maybe something else that's resulting or showing itself in this respiratory limiter. But that one's pretty simple. Just go back and relearn the basics. So then the third thing that could be causing this respiratory limitation is your depth of breath is not enough. So in other words, your tidal volume is not enough for a fixed respiration rate. So say I always want to row at 30 strokes per minute. That means, by definition, if I'm holding a 1-to-1 breath to stroke ratio, that I'm then breathing 30 times each minute. And that's by far the most effective breath ratio that you can hold on the rower. So if I can't breathe more frequently, that means that I need to be able to breathe deeper and more effectively in each individual breath. So that means tidal volume, getting more air in on each breath. Number one thing that we can do to help this out is having a stronger inspiratory or expiratory musculature, so you can actually get more air in more powerfully and quicker, and to be able to expel air quicker as well. So getting oxygen in, getting CO2 out, that's the most important thing that you can do. So there's really 2 interventions here. Number 1 is we can just be, having intentional full breaths while we're actually rowing. But 2, we can use other tools to sort of augment that. So we can use things like a training mask, which isn't an elevation trainer, but is great for providing resistance against your breath. And that allows you to develop your inspiratory or expiratory musculature. So again, not for elevation, but also a useful tool. We could be using something like a power lung or a Spiro Tiger or a belt breath mechanism. That's all gonna help provide a strengthening response from you. We could also be doing things that are going to help develop the elasticity and sort of flexibility of your abdominal wall, so you can actually move more air more effectively. So we can do things like actually like smashing your gut and creating more flexibility and more range of motion elasticity in that musculature, so we actually get more air in and out on each individual breath. So again, not necessarily speeding up the speed of our breaths in terms of respiration rate, but as individual breaths getting more air in and out. So then the fourth and final thing that could be causing this respiratory limitation is the fact that you just might be holding too low of a stroke rate, and again, therefore respiration rate while you're on the rower. So at a certain point, you can only get so much air in and out on each individual breath. And in order to exchange more air over the course of like a minute, let's say, you're going to have to increase the amount that you were breathing in terms of frequency. So quick mini lesson in respiratory physiology. There's really only 2 things that you can do to get more air in and out per minute. That's the frequency of your breaths. So that will be your respiration rate, and then your tidal volume. So the amount that you're getting in and out on each individual breath. So we've already talked about the tidal volume in the last piece. This piece is about the frequency, your respiration rate. So again, it's fixed. It's tied to the amount that you're rowing in terms of your stroke rate. So in order to breathe more in terms of frequency, you're gonna have to speed up your stroke rate. And again, this is the last thing that we're doing here. This is not a first tier intervention. This is like the end of it all. So again, it's also not gonna be super dramatic, right? So if I'm rowing at a, for example, like a 10K, I'm not gonna go from maybe 30 strokes per minute to 40 strokes per minute. That would be a dramatic difference. It might be you're going from 32 to 34 and something like a 10K. If it is a 1K, maybe you're going from a 35 strokes per minute to a 40 strokes per minute. And that would actually be a fairly big uptick in terms of stroke rate. However, that will certainly help the amount of potential that you have to get more air in and out in the course of that event. So ultimately, that's the goal. If you're having a respiratory limiter, is that you can exchange more air, both on the individual breaths, but also in the course of a minute because of the frequency of those. So it's pretty simple in this case. You just pick up the amount of your stroke rate with just a hair so that you can then breathe more frequently. And again, you have to be able to maintain the depth, the full breath as you're actually doing that. So, right? So if you're breathing faster, but you're cutting down those breaths slightly in terms of the volume in each one of those, then it's useless and it's not helpful intervention at all. So you have to practice getting a full deep breath on each stroke, even at a fast pace. And that's really the key to having performance while you're rowing. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know. Happy to help. And head over to ZOARfitness.com for movement breakdowns, training articles, and programming for the sport of fitness.